Just over 10 years ago, America was glued to their TV sets as the trial of Caylee Anthony unfolded before them. A young mother who had been accused of killing her 2-year-old daughter Caylee was finally going to face justice. As the weeks went by, more and more evidence was uncovered that proved Caylee's guilt. But when it came time for the jury to make their decision, they decided not to convict her for murder. Instead, they only found her guilty of the lesser charge of providing false information to law enforcement. Caylee was acquitted of all murder charges, and many people were left wondering if justice had failed baby Caylee. So what really happened in this case? And what did Caylee do after she was acquitted? This is the story of Caylee Anthony and what she's doing today. It was June 16, 2008 when Caylee Anthony called 911 and told the operator that her 2-year-old daughter Caylee had gone missing. According to Caylee, she'd last seen her daughter with her parents, Cindy and George Anthony, the day before, and they hadn't returned her. This didn't sit well with the police because there were several inconsistencies in Caylee's story. For starters, when asked about what Caylee was wearing when she disappeared, Caylee said that she had no idea. Yet when officers checked the surveillance footage from Caylee's apartment complex, they saw Caylee walking around without Caylee on the day that she supposedly vanished. In fact, Caylee appeared to be alone in all of the footage, and she could even be heard laughing at one point. Caylee's story changed yet again when she told the police that Caylee was wearing the same clothes that she'd been wearing the day prior. Officers, however, noticed that those clothes were hardly appropriate for a summer day in Orlando, Florida, which was smack in the middle of a heat wave. The shorts and long-sleeved shirt that Caylee was wearing would have been far too warm for the weather outside. Caylee also told the police that her mom had dropped Caylee off at her apartment wearing those clothes, but Cindy Anthony insisted that she had no idea what Caylee was talking about. As the days passed, Caylee's story became even more unbelievable. She told investigators that Caylee might have climbed out of her room window, but the window was far too high up for a 2-year-old to climb out of. Caylee then admitted that she had been driving around with Caylee in the car without her seatbelt on. But she insisted that she wasn't reckless and wouldn't speed or slam on the brakes. When she turned the car suddenly, however, Caylee slipped out of the window and tragically lost her life. While Caylee told a slightly different version of events to the police, she stuck to this story for a while. But eventually she confessed that she never took Caylee anywhere in the car and that her daughter had actually died at home in the family pool. Caylee claimed that one afternoon she left Caylee in the care of her brother, Lee, and went to work on her tan in the backyard. When she came back inside, she found Lee asleep on the couch and Caylee floating in the family pool. She said she tried to perform mouth-to-nose resuscitation, but Caylee couldn't be saved. In a panic, Caylee then put Caylee's body in a garbage bag and buried her in the woods near their house. Cindy Anthony didn't believe any of these stories, however, and she encouraged her husband George to search the property for evidence. They found a few clues like a blanket and some toys in the backyard, but nothing concrete. However, an anonymous tip soon came into the police, claiming that a little girl's body had been buried in the woods behind the Anthony house. A search of the area turned up a skull, 2 feet and some children's shoes. A forensic team later determined that the body parts belonged to Caylee, and Caylee's story began to fall apart. She was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and providing false information to law enforcement. Many people felt that Caylee was guilty from the start, especially because she seemed to show no emotion whatsoever when she learned that her daughter's body had been found. However, her defense attorney argued that while Caylee definitely lied to the police, there was no concrete evidence that she had killed Caylee. He suggested that Lee Anthony was most likely responsible for Caylee's death and that Caylee had only confessed to protecting her brother. As the trial got underway, more details of Caylee's strange behavior started to emerge. It was revealed that she had Googled chloroform and date rape drugs in the months leading up to Caylee's death. Witnesses also testified that they'd seen Caylee carrying Caylee's body to the pool in the weeks before she disappeared. Caylee herself took the stand in her own defense and swore that Lee was responsible for her daughter's death. She claimed that Lee had molested her since she was just 7 years old, and he'd even forced her to watch him engage in sexual acts with Caylee. She told the court that Caylee had stopped breathing in front of her and Lee, and they panicked and decided to cover it up. Casey insisted that she didn't know how Caylee died, but when pressed for answers by the prosecutor, she admitted that she had given her daughter duct tape and possibly chloroform. The state rested its case against Casey, and her defense attorney brought forward several witnesses that supported Casey's story. One of them, Dr. H.J. Dodds, was a medical expert who testified that Caylee may have accidentally drowned in the pool. But even he admitted that he couldn't say for sure how she died. After deliberating for 11 hours, the jury came back with a not guilty verdict for all murder charges, but they did find Casey guilty of providing false information to law enforcement. She was sentenced to 4 years in jail for this crime, but she had already spent 3 years behind bars awaiting trial. So she was released in October of 2011 after serving just over 2 months of her sentence. People were outraged by the verdict, and many felt that the entire justice system had failed baby Caylee. An author named Chris Volstead even wrote a fictionalized account of the trial called The Case of the Boy in the Box, in which Lee Anthony is the killer and Casey is innocent. Many people still believe that Lee was responsible for Caylee's death, and they're angry that he's never faced charges for his alleged crime. On top of that, it seems like Casey has lived a pretty comfortable life following her acquittal, which makes people wonder if she profited from her notoriety. After being released from prison, Casey reportedly signed a book deal with a publisher. Her memoir, where she tells her side of the story, was supposed to come out in 2012. But the release date was pushed back several times. Eventually, it was canceled altogether. Casey's publisher, Pocket Books, issued a statement saying that they had worked closely with Casey over the past year on her manuscript, but ultimately the book wasn't published due to creative differences. Casey and her attorneys attempted to sue the publisher, but those lawsuits were thrown out of court. In late 2013, Casey gave an interview to a TV host and told him that she wanted to move on with her life and that she planned to go to college and get a job. She said that she doesn't want to be remembered as the person on TV and that she is trying to live a normal life. Casey's next known address was in South Carolina, where she enrolled in a community college. She apparently did try to get a job, but her boss fired her after just a week because she wasn't a good fit for the position. Casey then moved to West Virginia and began working as a private investigator, but she soon got into legal trouble again after misusing confidential information. These days, Casey lives in Massachusetts and works for an insurance company as an independent contractor. She travels all over New England helping people file insurance claims for damage done to their homes. She keeps a low profile and tries to stay out of the public eye, but she's been spotted dining at restaurants and grocery shopping in her area. Most people don't know that she's the infamous Caylee Anthony, and she's able to live her life without much interference. Click here to watch one of these next videos and let us know in the comments section what you think Casey is doing now. Does she deserve a second chance or should she be punished for what she did to Caylee?